Welcome to Ace My Exams Learning. Let us get started with today's learning.
Read the article below and answer the questions that follow. Crime and corruption. South Africa continues to struggle with entrenched corruption and organized crime, both of which have a deeply corrosive impact on governance and economic growth. Although there was notable progress made during Nelson Mandela's leadership, the era of state capture and corruption under the Zuma administration triggered a sharp rise in organized crime. Today, South Africa is home to some of the most diversified crime syndicates in the world. These criminal networks are connected to transnational syndicates and are involved in trafficking people, firearms, drugs, and minerals. Additionally, they smuggle stolen copper and oil, often with the complicity of insiders, from South African state-owned enterprises. These criminal groups also extort businesses, leading to the cancellation of important contracts, which in turn causes job losses and economic setbacks. While the current Ramaphosa administration has made some genuine efforts to combat both corruption and crime, these steps have so far been limited in scope and impact. Question. In your own words, explain the link between crime and corruption. The link between crime and corruption is a threat to democracy, economic development, and social stability because of the following factors. Firstly, corruption serves as a key enabler for the operations of organized crime groups. These criminal networks rely heavily on the willingness of individuals in positions of authority to accept bribes or engage in unethical behavior. When officials are corrupt, they create loopholes in systems that criminals can exploit to conduct their activities without fear of consequences. In essence, corruption removes the barriers that law enforcement and governance are meant to enforce, giving organized crime a safe space to grow and operate. Furthermore, corruption opens the door for criminal networks to infiltrate nearly every sector of society, from politics to policing and even the justice system. When criminal groups can influence police officers, prosecutors, or government officials, they gain an unfair advantage that compromises the integrity of the institutions meant to protect the public. This infiltration allows them to hide their activities, sabotage investigations, and create a climate where crime can flourish unchecked. It undermines public trust in state institutions and weakens the rule of law. Perhaps most dangerously, corruption allows criminals to obtain protection from public officials, manipulate political outcomes, and penetrate legitimate businesses. This means that not only do they operate with impunity, but they can also control key economic and political levers of power. As a result, decisions that affect the broader society may be shaped by the interests of criminal organizations rather than the public good. Question. How do crime and corruption affect service delivery in our communities? Crime and corruption deeply affect service delivery in our communities in the following ways. Crime and corruption deeply erode the foundation of fair governance by distorting the principles of justice and equality. When patronage and bribery become the norm, the human right to equal access to public services is severely compromised. Public officials may offer services only to those who can pay bribes or have political connections, effectively turning essential services, like clean water, education, and healthcare, into privileges rather than rights. This practice not only undermines the dignity of individuals, but also creates a society marked by inequality and exclusion. Nepotism is another damaging form of corruption that hinders effective service delivery. When people are given jobs based on family ties or friendships rather than merit, critical positions end up being filled by individuals who are unqualified or lack the competence needed to perform. As a result, communities experience delayed, inefficient, or altogether failed service delivery. Poor leadership at local levels often leads to wasted resources, unresolved problems, and a growing sense of helplessness among citizens. The misuse of public funds, especially in sectors like healthcare, is one of the most tragic outcomes of corruption. When money meant for hospitals and clinics is embezzled or misallocated, it leads to a shortage of essential medical supplies. Patients may be turned away, life-saving treatments may be unavailable, and health workers may become demoralized. In the end, the financial burden increases because the state must divert even more money to fix issues caused by theft and mismanagement, which is a direct cost to taxpayers. Substandard services and poorly executed projects are common where corruption is present. When corrupt officials award contracts to their allies, these contractors often use cheap materials or ignore safety standards to maximize profit. The result is infrastructure that crumbles quickly, roads full of potholes, leaking roofs in newly built schools, or water systems that break down within months. Communities are left not only without the promised services, but also with the added cost of repairs and replacements. Corruption doesn't just affect how services are delivered, it also redirects critical public resources away from the people who need them most. Whether it's housing funds being stolen or social grants being looted, corruption ensures that only a small group benefits while the majority remain in poverty. This diversion of resources drains national wealth, slows development, and leaves communities stuck in cycles of need and dependency. On a broader scale, corruption can destabilize an entire country. When citizens continually see their needs ignored and their communities neglected, it breeds anger and frustration. This often leads to protests, strikes, and acts of civil unrest, which sometimes result in the destruction of public property and infrastructure. Ironically, the very services people are fighting for become more delayed or destroyed in the process, worsening the situation further. Lastly, corrupt suppliers who are awarded contracts without proper oversight often use inferior materials in public works projects. Whether it's faulty electrical wiring in schools or collapsing bridges, the risks to public safety are enormous. These failures are not merely inconveniences, they can be fatal. Poor infrastructure directly contributes to the lack of effective service delivery and perpetuates a cycle where public trust in institutions continues to decline. Question: give the possible reasons why there is a high level of corruption in the public sector. Corruption in the public sector is a major challenge faced by many countries around the world. The following reasons explain why there is a high level of corruption in the public sector. One of the key reasons for the high level of corruption in the public sector is ineffective law enforcement. When laws are not properly implemented or enforced, public officials feel emboldened to engage in corrupt practices without fear of consequences. The absence of strong, consistent punishment for corruption creates an environment in which unethical behavior thrives. Another contributing factor is conflicts of interest, where personal gain is placed above public responsibility. When public officials make decisions that benefit themselves, their friends, or family members at the expense of the public good, corruption becomes inevitable. This conflict undermines trust in government and weakens service delivery. Poor governance is also a major driver of corruption. It often stems from weak institutional frameworks, poor leadership, a lack of transparency, and limited public access to information. When there is no proper oversight or accountability, public funds and resources are easily misused for private benefit. Corruption also arises from appointing unqualified individuals to senior positions. This practice, often tied to political loyalty rather than competence, leads to poor decision-making and inefficient management. When those in power lack the necessary skills and knowledge, corruption is more likely to occur, as standards are ignored or misunderstood. The bureaucratic nature of government structures further contributes to the problem. In some cases, excessive layers of administration give certain officials too much unchecked power. When officials hold monopolies over decisions and resources, the opportunities for bribery and abuse increase dramatically. A significant barrier to fighting corruption is the lack of political will to arrest and prosecute corrupt officials. When leaders and influential figures are not held accountable, it sends a message that corruption is tolerated or even protected. This weakens public trust and encourages further misconduct. Lastly, the difficulty in removing corrupt employees from public office creates a culture of impunity. When officials know that their jobs are secure regardless of their actions, they are more likely to engage in corrupt behavior. This lack of consequences perpetuates unethical conduct throughout the public sector.
To access more learning and exam preparation materials, go to www.acemyexams.coza. This link is also in the video description below. Thank you for watching this video. Remember to subscribe and be the first to know when we upload new videos.